What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of your favorite podcast, the Nashville Scene podcast,
it's
right?
Tagline.
Yeah, it's a new tagline. Right? I'm your co-host, Jerome Moore, and I'm here with my favorite co-host of all time. I'm going with the initials today, DPR.
That's right.
Editor-in-Chief.
Hello, Jerome. Thank you for the wonderful intro, as always.
As always.
Episode 10 of the Nashville Scene podcast. Thanks for coming back. This week, we have a really fun topic that I'm excited to get into, and first, let me introduce our guests. First, I'll start with Margaret Littman, longtime freelance contributor for the Nashville Scene. Hello, Margaret.
Hi.
Margaret writes a lot about food for us, but also other things, culture and business and all kinds of stuff, and we'll get into that. And we also have joining us Lauren and Kendall Morales from TomKats Hospitality on either side of Margaret there. Lauren closest to me for those watching, Kendall at the other end. And we'll get into what you guys do and all of the many irons you have in the fire. But first, I just want to start with Margaret. Will you tell us about this week's cover story, which is all you? It's about women-owned venues. Will you just sort of walk us through the story a little bit?
Yeah, thanks. It's no exaggeration that I've been thinking about this story, I think, all year. I just started thinking about how there was this sort of perception that there weren't women-owned venues, music venues, or there were one or two. There were lots of qualifiers, and I just kept thinking that can't be right. And then I would hear about another one. And then when Friends in Low Places opened and Trisha Yearwood said that she was one of the owners there, that just started me thinking and digging into it. And then talking to Stephen and talking to you about, okay, what does this mean? Like, if there is, we can make this list of women-owned venues, but also what does that mean? So we got to do this really deep dive looking at what it means to be a woman-owned music venue here. We compiled a list of about 17, and we defined music venue very broadly. We also defined women ownership very broadly, so broader than sort of government definitions. And then we took a look at about what these women are doing, which is incredible, and why it's important to the city. And a lot of what these venues are doing are really preserving what Music City is. They're giving opportunity for musicians who might not be able to play elsewhere to play original music, to test out original music at some of the smaller venues, getting their first opportunities to be in front of an audience. And all of that is crucial for this Music City ecosystem. So we got to look into that and look at how different these venues are. There's some honky tonks. There are some in neighborhoods. There's a live music karaoke spot, Sid Gold's Request Room, where those pianists are playing both covers that people are doing karaoke with, but also performing their own music, and really looking at how the owners are keeping it going, because I don't know how you all do it. It's very hard. I can't even imagine how hard it is.
So all of the owners are not balling out crazy downtown, all them tourists? I just thought they was all balling at this point.
Well, you have a couple
Lauren,
people
Kendall,
you can ask.
I am pocket checking right now.
Famously, nothing but profits in venue ownership. Well, what I love, Margaret, about the story is you really kind of touch on so many different sort of corners of music performance and venue spaces. I mean, there's dark matter, like small DIY punk venues, to Acme, which we'll get into in a minute, really big venues, and there's downtown honky tonks, spaces in neighborhoods, and so often people, it's like you said, I think our list is 17 or 18 of these spaces, and a lot of times people kind of assume it's far fewer, or they're kind of operating independently, so people don't really realize, there's actually this pretty big network of women owners. Well, I also want to ask, let's introduce Lauren and Kendall. Will you guys just tell us a little bit about TomKats and your history with venue ownership and what you do?
Yeah, I'll start. So we are with TomKats Catering. It's a family-owned business. Tom and Kathy are our parents. And we were always the Tom Kittens. And TomKats started in 1986, actually doing backstage catering at Starwood Amphitheater. So
R.I.P. Starwood.
I know. I knew every corner of that place because my parents did not have could not afford daycare at the time. So Starwood was my babysitter, and So yeah, started in the music industry really, and then obviously went into movie catering and did movie catering for about 35 years. We retired that in 2017. But in 2001, we opened Sapphire Restaurant, which was our first family restaurant. And then we did Southern Steak and Oyster in 2012.
I love it.
It's my
I was
baby.
telling people,
It's so good.
I was just hoping y'all was gonna bring me in like a aged, like I would have ate it right here.
Yeah, sorry. Now I feel guilty.
ASMR podcast of you just eating a steak.
Hey, sponsored by.
We'll bring you some. And then Acme opened in 2014, so it's our 10-year anniversary at Acme.
Congratulations.
But we're also heavily involved with historic preservation. So our offices were on Broadway in the early 90s. We renovated and restored 408 Broadway, which now is home to Lucky Bastards. But the TomKats mural is still on the side of the street. And so
can't get rid of that.
Our roots are really on Broadway in a real way. We've both grown up there on Broadway physically. So
and Acme is sort of, I think of it almost like the anchor point of Lower Broad. It's like right down there at the river. It's a big space. You guys are multi-floors, right? So
I think I always get nervous saying the first of anything, but as far as I can tell, we were the first rooftop bar on Broadway. I think Tootsie's Rooftop Bar opened a couple months later.
And that's proven to be a pretty popular concept, I believe, down there.
Yes.
Sure.
Margaret, I think you had some stuff you wanted to dig into that we weren't able to touch on in the cover story, so I'll kind of let you take the lead on asking about that.
So I have known how involved you all have been in TomKats for years. And then when I heard that your dad had finally agreed to retire or take some time off and that you guys had taken over, I was super excited to talk about how you continue his amazing legacy and also are thinking about ways that you're bringing your vision forward. And one of the things that we talked about that I'd love to have you go into detail about is sort of how you're bridging this divide between downtown and the neighborhoods. I think often there's some tension between the two. I want to talk about how you're doing that sort of musically and with some of the projects, Kendall, that you're working on, the events that you're working on.
Yeah, I mean, I think especially you kind of nailed it. I think there is some tension between downtown and the neighborhoods. And I think with Lauren and I think one of our missions is obviously to keep what our dad has already established and keep with those values, which is preserving Nashville, authentic Nashville, whether it's in the buildings or the music or the food. So we definitely, that's our mission moving forward. And I think getting back into the neighborhoods, it creates that connection that I think is missing. A lot of people see these big owners on Broadway and they don't know who they are, what they stand for. And so I think getting back in the neighborhoods, whether it's community events, we do Record Store Day with The Groove in East Nashville every year. It's one of our favorite events we do. We get to talk to people. We get to get that connection going. They get to see who we are, where we stand. And then it also makes them feel more comfortable coming back downtown because they know, okay, we've met them. We know it's going to be safe. We know they're going to have good local music. So it makes it more comfortable for hopefully locals to feel like they can come downtown and they haven't lost that aspect in Nashville.
I love that because I think we talked about this a little bit before, but like I'm growing up here. I'm from North Nashville specifically, and growing up here, like Nashville outside of 2nd Avenue, growing up, which it's not going to be the same
right.
growing up before, but like going down a Lower Broad wasn't something like we did as locals a lot. It's like, that's more for like tourists and people who just here for the weekend or whatever. Mm-hmm. So I love that you all are trying to figure out a way to bridge that between people like myself and Patrick that grew up here and is from here to be like, hey, like downtown is also, Lower Broad is also for you too.
Exactly.
And so, yeah.
And there's been such a push for tourism. I think that piece has really gotten lost in the mix. And I think, and we also, I mean, we say this all the time, we want to be the place where when people are coming to visit local Nashvillians and they say, oh, we have to go to Broadway. And of course, locals are like, ugh, like we have to go to Broadway. And we want to be the place that's like, oh, I'm going to take them to Acme. Yeah. And we feel, Roberts is a great example of that. So that's kind of our mission, is to be that safe place that, obviously we don't want locals to feel like they have to go to Broadway. But when they do come down to Broadway, we want them to feel like, okay, we can have fun at Acme. We're going to see a great show. We're going to see like a cool band from East Nashville or from North Nashville or wherever. And and have some good food and a good time doing it.
When you're talking about local musicians, you're also talking about original music, right? It's not
Absolutely.
just local musicians playing covers.
Yeah, that's kind of one of our focuses. And Lauren, you explain this really well, that we obviously covers are great, but we really try to encourage the musicians we have on our stage to play originals and have that platform for them there. And I think, Lauren, you talk about how Dad talks about growing up in Nashville during his time and how it was a discovery platform.
Yeah, Dad's stories, because he's a local Nashvilleian. He was the first of his family of 10 kids to be born in Nashville, and he grew up in Madison. Yeah.
Also, one of 10, you said?
One of 10.
Okay.
He was number 4. And
Shout out to Grandma then.
Yeah, right. And his favorite story is taking 2 station wagons with 2 German Shepherds, both station wagons full of kids, to Acme to get their dogs dipped for free every Saturday.
Oh my God.
Which I actually found I didn't mean to digress, but I found a great vintage scene article on the Saturday dog dips from the 90s.
From the 90s?
Yeah, at
Okay.
Acme. So I saved it and printed it so we can hang it on the wall in Acme.
Oh my God, that's
Love it.
Because it was a community event coming downtown. Whether you were going to the hardware store or you were going to see live music. So his dad one time brought them all to the Merchants Motel to see a not big artist at the time called Willie Nelson play in the lobby at the Merchants. And of course he was a kid, so he didn't fully appreciate it at the time. But looking back, he's like, we need that spirit in Nashville again. Because Broadway was always where you went to play so that you could play the Ryman Auditorium. And it was the discovery platform of the city, and there were A&R people in every club on Broadway. And so when we were opening Acme, we were like, how do we bring that back and not just be a cover bar? So there's a place for covers. If you're doing a 3-hour set, musicians have to play covers to stretch that. Stretch that 3 hours. So we do have cover bands, and late nights might be a cover band, but really Mondays through Saturdays, probably more than 50% of our music is going to be original.
And that's pretty novel. I mean, it's not that you're the only place down there that's ever doing originals, of course. I know some other performers that play Roberts and other spaces you mentioned. But by and large, if you walk down Broadway, if you're going to, Pred's game or whatever, you're hearing, Wagon Wheel covered and every kind of coming out of every window or whatever it is. And that's great too. But to make it a point to do original music is pretty special there, right? Yeah.
I think it's super important because it's part of to have tourists come here and hear something that they can't hear anywhere else. I think is part of what makes Nashville so special, right? And it continues that why you would want to come back or why you would want to follow these bands. And that came up with some of the other venues in this story. The Bowery Vault in East Nashville, their mission is also original music. Originally, they were no covers at all. They have much shorter sets. But I think now you are allowed to end your set with a cover or two. But again, that's essential because that's what we need to have people be trying new music and getting that experience in front of audiences.
Yeah.
Well, and it's really not just a Nashville challenge. It's like the music industry as a whole. We've got these massive tours, and you've got the Taylor Swift Eras Tour and the Beyonce Renaissance Tour, but there's never going to be a Taylor Swift Eras Tour if there's not club gigs first. Right. She had to hit the clubs to become the performer she is. And if we lose those spaces where people can try out sets, maybe not nail every song, it is a higher risk for the venue, but it's the only way our music ecosystem as a whole survives.
Yeah. Margaret, you interviewed a lot of people for this story, and I can't recall who it was, but there's a very similar quote where somebody's like, if we're not providing these spaces for independent artists to try out their new tunes, we're not going to have new tunes in 20 years, right? We're not going to have original artists.
I think that was Vero from the Bowery Vault, but definitely Olive and Catherine at Dark Matter said that. We also talked to Mary Mancini from Lucy's Record Shop, which was sort of the forerunner, the inspiration for Dark Matter. Also, it came up in the story that while Bluebird Cafe is not women-owned anymore, it was at the point when Taylor got that, first, those first experiences.
I want to get on that women-owned part because we had these amazing women up here, and I think it's only right that we kind of give you all a chance a little bit to unpack like what that means to have a woman-owned venue and talk about some of the maybe challenges that are unique to women, but also opportunities for other women to play a part in this industry that is male-dominated. That was a good-ass question.
That was a good question.
I felt right. You know?
I mean, Lauren, do you want to talk about some of this? Because you talked in the story about some of the inspiration you have and how...
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously music is an emotional experience, and it's very subjective to the consumer of the music. And so you need diverse spaces to make sure that every person that consumes music, which is every human being, can connect in some way. And so I think it's important that you have female artists on lineups, festival lineups, because you're going to have female audience members. It's important that our venues are safe and that females feel safe attending shows. And so I think having female ownership can lend that perspective to safety goals within a venue that, through our personal experiences of attending shows that, a male owner might not be able to connect with as much. So yeah, I think there's a lot of benefits.
You all have done that safe bar training, correct?
Yeah, we did. We've done all the safe bar training with the Sexual Assault Center locally.
Can you explain a little bit of what that is for listeners that don't know about Safe Bar?
Yeah, mostly they're arming us with tools to make sure we're safe. So they bring us coasters that have simple drop testing for drugs and drinks. They train our staff on how to recognize a patron that may either be overserved or have maybe encountered a drug, because it's not always drugs. It's sometimes just overconsumption.
Yeah, true. Or just unsafe experiences, right?
Right. We are a place that even if they're experiencing a challenge outside of our doors, having that Safe Bar certification, they know they can come in and, we'll contact the authorities for them and take care of them and provide a safe space for them. But essentially, more than 50% of our staff have to be trained at any point in time in order to keep our certification. So they do regular trainings with our team, our front of house team.
That's great. Yeah. And Margaret, you've done some reporting on Safe Bar in the past. It's linked to in our story, and I'll probably just throw some links up in the show notes for this episode. But it's kind of a really important work here in Nashville that a lot of bars have kind of slowly but surely started to take on.
Yeah, it is really important. And I was excited in this reporting to find out that there are some other programs like Calling All Crows and a program that a former Nashville musician, Shauna Potter, has started nationally, where they're kind of taking the same kind of training and elevating it and taking it specifically to music venues and talking about some of it's similar challenges to the bars, but there are some differences. And a number of the women in this story talked about some of the challenges that performers have with maybe techs and sound engineers and that sort of thing. Things like safely walk when your gig is over at 1 a.m., safely walking with your valuable equipment from the venue back to your car, wherever. And so like looking at a really holistic picture of safety. And it's not that male-owned venues can't do that work, but there is a sensitivity that across the board, all of the women I interviewed for this piece talked about that. I mean, and some of them also had terrific stories. Kara Small from Sid Gold's, she told me a story about Amy D at D's, chasing someone out of the bar with a baseball bat. And this is before Kara owned Sid Gold's, and she watched Amy do it, and she said, I wonder if I could ever do that. And there's sort of a similar story about Tootsie Bess, I guess, used to have some kind of hat pin that she used to kind of stick people and get them out of the way.
We need to get one of those.
I guess Charlie Pride gave her it was a
Also, it's like,
a legendary hat pin. But so again, I think no one I interviewed was really trying to bash male-owned venues, but there is a sensitivity about safety. There is a sensitivity. Marcy at AB Hillsborough Village is really intentional about not just having female performers, but having female techs and having people who are having trouble booking other venues. And there's just a way that women-owned venues are sort of being more holistic, I think.
Yeah, and if there's more women in the room, same with any marginalized group. If there's more people in the room, they can bring to you the issues they face. That the very male-dominated, very white-dominated world of venue ownership is going to be as aware of. Right.
And I guess too is like, how do you all try to make sure there are more women-owned venues supporting, future women entrepreneurs who want to get into that? I'll be interested in knowing, like, how do you all do that, or do you have interest in doing that as well? Especially for those who maybe watch this, like, hey, I want to get into this injury hospitality, and I'm a woman, and I don't know where to start, because I think that plays a part of like just having more business women.
Mm-hmm. It is a very hard industry, especially at the club level. Mm-hmm. People are drinking less, which is our primary form of revenue. Mm-hmm. So there's challenges not only being a female in the space, but just as a whole in the space. And one thing we just worked on, a big alliance of us, was the Greater Nashville Music Census, which I thought was a great starting point. And that data will be released to the public in mid-September. We've gotten some glimpses of it. And like Margaret, we were really surprised with how well represented women were in the music industry, because I think we had this notion that maybe they were going to be, they are still underrepresented, but not at the level we expected, which that'll be fun for everyone to get to see that data. And our intent is to use that to inform policy decisions, because while we need patronage and we need you to buy a drink when you come to see a show, especially if it's a free show, and all of that helps, it's going to take more than that to really save our venues, our independent venues, and make it a place where anyone can own a venue that's not a Live Nation venue or a corporate-owned venue.
Exactly.
So I think really at the policy level is where I'm hoping to see change, and we're talking with the governor. We just recently passed a independent venue fund that'll be a grant program. We just need the funding now, but the fund is there. And there's some other really great funds in other cities that are leading the way. Austin has got some great grant programs, but that's what it's going to take, I think. And then the if you can overcome the financial burden of owning a small venue, that's 90% of the challenge.
Yeah. And then you have I mentioned Dark Matter earlier. They're currently trying to gain nonprofit status, which would completely change how their structure works. Something else I wanted to mention before we run out of time is you talked about Tootsie Bess. I love that story, which made it into your cover story. So there is a legacy of women-owned venues and spaces in Nashville. I mean, Layla is somebody that you guys, I feel like people look to her.
Layla's been like a mentor for me.
Yeah, Layla Vartanian, I believe is how you say her last name. Tell us about Layla. I think people know the name Layla, but why is that?
Well, she's fierce. We love her. We love going to meetings and having her in the room because it's great. She's not afraid to stand up and speak her mind. She's not afraid to say it how it is. And I think going back to your question about what women face as challenges in this industry, I think it's kind of broad across all industries with women. Is it's hard to be it when you're in a room full of very strong, powerful men. You can sometimes get spoken over or interrupted, or but Layla does not have any of those issues. She's great, and we love that about her.
Yeah. Layla of Layla's Honky Tonk. Yeah.
Yeah, and she stands up for what's right, too. She's not scared to be the contradictory voice in the room, which is refreshing. And she's definitely helped me be more feisty in the room when I need to be. So,
which is necessary.
She gives us courage.
And she's owned it since, I believe 1975, and she's also, so obviously she's seen a lot of changes on Broadway, and she's adapted. It used to be called Layla's Bluegrass Inn, and I listened to another podcast with her where she was saying, well, people wanting to come see bluegrass didn't want to drink enough. And so that's sort of how it became the Honky Tonk. But she's been able to adapt. But sort of going back to what you said before, Lauren, she paid for that bar. She paid $5,000 on her credit card when she bought that bar, and that was for the inventory. And you can't just go buy a bar for $5,000 or whatever the equivalent of 1975 $5,000 is. I don't know what that is, but that's still not possible. So that's part of the challenge is you can't do that. And you mentioned a little bit about free shows or even, let's say, $10 shows, which is like what the Bowery Vault is trying to do, is make those shows really affordable so people can go see new acts. But you also, even if it's $10, if you want to give all of the door to the band, which is, not very much, then you do have to have a way to like keep the lights on. So that you can continue to have those opportunities.
Right.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, and one of our missions that we will never bend on is when we opened, we knew we would pay every musician a living wage and a high guarantee and not require them to beg for tips. And, when we do Record Store Day, like Kendall mentioned, every year, we always say, hey, if we can't raise enough money this year to pay the musicians, we're not doing it.
Yeah.
So, we pay our musicians at Record Store Day, which is a nonprofit event. So, it does create quite the expense.
Yeah, but you're also...
You have to sell a lot of beer, and it's a good thing people aren't drinking as much beer anymore, but it's not as good for the revenue model.
And you also mentioned your staff, too. You told me you pay health insurance.
We offer health insurance to every staff member over 20 hours a week average. So our part-time employees get health insurance.
Wow.
Yeah, and 401k.
Wow, that's amazing. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Are you guys hiring?
I had the same thought.
Put the link to the application in the show.
This journalism thing isn't like all I can do. Well, that's amazing. Margaret, you covered so much ground in this cover story. It's a really wonderful story and a lot of fun, great photos, great cover illustration. I can't wait for people to see. But yeah, what else did you kind of learn? What did you uncover in reporting this story?
We've covered so much of it here, but I feel like one of the things that was so cool is really the diversity of the kind of concept. And I think, again, we get sort of into this perception that Nashville is Broadway or Nashville is all this same kind of music, which we all know it's not. But even taking this little microcosm of women-owned venues, and we got so many different kinds of music. And we got, Amy D trying to have more sort of a classic country experience. And we have the original music at Acme and Bowery Vault. And we have AB Hillsborough Village that's doing a lot with Grace Bowers, who's this phenom guitar player. They're also doing drag shows. And, Sid Gold's doing this piano music. And it was just, I found so inspiring and dark matter with like sort of more punk and alternative, and it was just so inspiring to see that like really Music City can be anything, and there are all these women who are interpreting it differently. And even the way Trisha and Garth are interpreting their Honky Tonk, which is obviously not small business.
Which I have to shout out. Kendall's husband is a regular DJ there.
Oh, cool.
Oh.
Yeah, go see
DJ
him.
manager Mike.
Shout out to DJ Manager Mike.
Saturday, and I think it's the Oasis, right? This is their rooftop.
Oh, the
Yeah.
Oasis, of course. Come on down to the Oasis. Yeah.
Check them out.
Shout out your brother-in-law. You got to do it.
Yeah. But what they're trying to do is different than what, Layla is trying to do or what they're trying to do at Acme. And so I found it really inspiring, even though there are so many challenges. The safety stuff is hard to read a lot, and listening to those stories is hard, and the financial part of it is hard. But it was also really inspiring to talk to people who are doing new things. The new Harkin Hall, which is in Madison, which was going to be the Roots Barn, that's owned by a woman, and that venue is just, it's
Gorgeous.
unbelievably beautiful.
I got to see it a couple weeks ago. It's amazing. Yeah.
I told Lauren and Kendall this when I went on the tour. Jamie kept saying, we want it to feel like you're in your home here. I was like, well, Jamie, can I come to your home?
Yeah,
Because
absolutely.
my home does not look like this. I have never seen a home that
Custom
looks
stained
like
glass
this.
and everything.
Right.
But I loved those bright upholstered benches on the second floor or the balcony. It's really stunning. And so the idea that, I think that's just going to be transformative for Madison to have bluegrass on that patio, and you can like walk over to the farmer's market and walk over to Pinky Ring Pizza, and like that's going to be a game changer and a thing that 10 years ago was unimaginable.
Yeah, unthinkable in that part of Madison. Yeah.
So I think that part of it was super inspiring to me.
Yeah.
Anytime I get to just interview badass women, that's inspiring. But this was all particularly inspiring.
Yeah, I loved it. And you were updating me as you were working on the story. Like, I've got this interview lined up and this one and this one. I was like, I think this might have to be a 10,000 word cover story. But you somehow managed to make it work in 3,000 words.
Well, thank you for those extra words, because at one point it was like 6,000 and I didn't know what I was going to do. So.
It's great. Well, it's a pleasure always editing you and reading you. And
Thank you.
it's great to have you here with us. And Morales, thank you for joining us as well.
Thank you so much.
It's been really fun.
It's always great talking to great women, badass women.
That's right.
Right? So go
Badass
support a badass woman venue.
That's right.
Yes.
All right.
Please.
Like, subscribe, share. That's it.
Thanks for tuning in. See you
Knocked
next
it
time.
out.